rewiring your mind and what we call both and thinking. So, we want to start off by talking about how life is full of paradoxes. And a paradox is when two things are seemingly true at the same time, right? A contradictory statement. So, here I'll pull up some images of things that can be paradoxes. So, in this first video, you can change the way the person is rotating just by thinking about it. So, when you initially look at it, she might be rotating to the right or to the left. But if you really think hard about it, you can switch the rotation of the way she's turning. In this image, um, whether you see two faces or a vase in the middle, you're correct either way, right? Both can be true at the same time. This one is from a 2015 viral image where some people saw the dress as black and blue, and some people saw it as white and gold, right? And both can be true, as we found out. It just depends on the lighting on your phone or whatever device you're looking at. And some people, can easily switch between the two. Some people can't. But this is just another example of both things being true at the same time. And this last one is a cartoon where one person sees a six, the other person sees a nine. Totally depends on their perspective, but they're both technically correct. Other examples of paradoxes we see in our everyday life are people saying saving money by spending money, the phrase the beginning of the end. Another one is if I know one thing, I know nothing at all. And so, as we can see, paradoxes are part of everyday life. And what paradoxes really are is tension, right? It's the friction between two things that can, on their own, be true. So for this one, the image is a vase. We all see a vase. However, if I say this image is two people's side profiles, that's also true. And so what paradoxes bring us to is the concept that not everything is black and white. Not everything is only one thing. And many things can be true, in fact, which is what we'll dive into in this presentation.
Perfect. So next we're going to look at the both and thinking. So this is a book that is written by Wendy Smith and Marianne Lewis. So it is an insightful and inspiring book on using the both and or thinking to make more creative, flexible, as well as impactful decision making in a world of competing demands. So again, this is a thought-provoking book that challenges readers to rethink their assumptions about the world around them. Again, going back to those images that Valerie showed previously. So Smith argues that this way of thinking is essential for us to navigate the complexities of modern life and for finding new solutions to old problems. She also provides an example of how both and thinking has been used successfully in businesses, politics, and other fields. And she also offers practical advice for how readers can incorporate this way of thinking into their daily lives. So again, if you haven't heard of this book, maybe you can go online, listen to, I believe that there's a audio version that you can also listen to, but this is a great book if you want to go a little bit more deeper and learn more about the both and thinking. Any questions? Anyone have heard of this book before we go on to the next slide? Just want to pause for a second here to allow any feedback. Perfect. We'll go on to the next slide, Valerie.
Great. So again, two people can go through the exact same situation at the same time and have two totally different experiences or feelings about it. And both and thinking speaks exactly to this. So the idea that multiple things can be true at once, multiple feelings, multiple experiences. Um, and so that's really what we want to talk about today. The opposite of both and thinking is either or thinking, right? Which I'm sure a lot of us also do in our daily lives. We say either I can do this or I can do that. We kind of give ourselves two options. So in this one, we want to explore examples of both and. So, for example, you can feel both angry towards a parent or grateful for certain things they did for you. You can feel overwhelmed at work or school or in your volunteer position, but also be motivated to continue what you're doing. And so we see that this happens a lot, and there are many benefits to both and thinking. It can encourage relationship growth. It can relieve anxiety when you're not giving yourself, the limits of only thinking through one lens and not the other. And it can also promote healing, right? To try to see things from multiple perspectives. And we always say that both and thinking is like skiing or skateboarding, which you can see our penguin and kangaroo doing here on the screen. When you're skiing or skating, you're constantly shifting your weight and momentum back and forth. You're trying to find the right balance. And the more you practice the balancing and the more you ski and skateboard, the easier and more natural it becomes. And so the same is true with both and thinking. When you practice shifting your perspective, asking more questions, trying to see it from other perspectives, not shying away from inconsistency, you'll find yourself shifting slowly but surely. And as humans, we have lots of complex feelings. So we rarely only experience one feeling at a time, right? A lot of times we can have multiple feelings at once. And so figuring out how to let all of that happen and realizing that, your emotions don't have to be opposites. You don't have to pick the one or the other. That can really be helpful and really help heal us and change our perspective. So I'll pass it back to Samaria.
Perfect. All right. So there are some things that might start happening when you employ the both and thinking. So the first one is the creative problem solving, right? And then we're going to talk about this a little bit more deeper, but just want to highlight what we have on a slide here. So the first thing that you will see is the creative problem solving. And then also you'll have a deeper understanding of your own feelings as well as your triggers. And then you become better connection. You have better connections as well as relationships. You increase your resiliency. Also, it's easier time with making decisions. So taking a more deeper dive in this, how we can continue to use this when we start employing the both and or thinking. You stop seeing situations as either I'm right or you're right, and you start noticing the complexities. You will also experience less internal conflicts within yourself because you allow different emotions to coexist, such as feeling grateful or acknowledging that I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. You also give yourself more flexibility, which helps reduce stress as well as rigid self-judgment, which sometimes we all do. And then you listen, right? You become a better listener because you're not focused on providing your side or proving your side. You're more focused on understanding what is being said, understanding the other person, understanding the situation that you're navigating. You respond instead of react. A lot of us tend to react. We react first instead of responding. So you allow yourself to just, listen and then you respond instead of reacting by slowing down enough to see more than one angle of the situation. You also increase your ability to have empathy for others, as well as recognizing their experiences that don't cancel out your own. So, what can you use both and thinking for? Again, you can process emotions as well as traumas as they come up. So naming conflicting feelings without the shame. So an example would be, this hurt me and I still care about that person, right? Allowing healing to happen at a different speed instead of different parts of your life. Making space for complexities instead of forcing yourself into one narrative and one way of thinking. So again, another part of that is understanding why things happen to us. Sometimes we have this one way of thinking that maybe we are cursed or maybe this happened to me because of this or that. But if we start using the both and or thinking to help us understand, we allow ourselves to recognize that circumstances can be influenced by both personal choices as well as the external factors. Seeing that growth can also come from difficult events, and those events can still be painful, right? And then accepting that multiple causes can exist simultaneously. And then when we have misunderstanding, so this can help us also when we have misunderstanding with someone else. So when we have those misunderstandings with other people, we notice, right? It allows us to notice your perspective is valid and theirs may be valid as well. Instead of just saying, yeah, you're right, I'm wrong, or I'm wrong and you're right. It allows you to have that perspective of both. We can be, our both of our perspectives are right. Also, it allows you to realize the harm, right, can be unintentional and still impact you. And then also allows you to make room for shared responsibilities as well as shared solutions. So, how this can also help you is when you're having difficult understandings as to why things happen the way that they do. So, the first one that we'll look at is accepting that a life can be unpredictable as well as still meaningful for each and every one of us, as well as allowing situations to be unfair and good opportunities for learning. And then the last one is seeing that answers can be incomplete, changing, as well as multi-layered. So that was a lot of information around what you can do and how you can use the both and or thinking and how you deal with and process emotions and trauma, as well as understanding why things happen to us and when you have misunderstandings with someone else, as well as when you have difficulties understanding why things happen and why people do the things that they do. So I'm going to pause here because that was a lot of information and just allow open it up for any questions, any aha moments, any clarification that any of you may have. Again, feel free to take yourself off of mute or put your responses in the chat. All right. We'll go ahead and give it back to Valerie. And again, if any questions or comments come up, reflections, please feel free to let us know, put in the chat or take yourself off of mute, and I'll go ahead and give it back to Valerie.
Great. So now we're going to run through some examples, and you guys will give me multiple feelings that can be true at once. And again, unmute yourself or share in the chat. So the first one is dropping your child off at college. What kinds of feelings come up for us?
I'll do that one. Yeah, since I have just been doing it a lot these last couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, excitement for them. And then, and I think I saw Patricia said that too. I definitely lots of tears.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
also really sad to see your children, I guess, fly the coop. Makes you feel very proud, but very sad.
Yeah, exactly. And Patricia, yeah, similarly said happy and sad. So thank you for sharing. So yeah, this is like a really big step in your child's life or your loved one's life. And it's normal for us to have lots of feelings about it, right? We're excited for them, everything that they're gonna do. But also, right, we can make us sad that they're leaving, it could be anxious because it's their first time on their own. So again, just an example of multiple things being true at once. Our next example, starting a new job. What kinds of feelings come up with that one?
I think it's similar in the sense that there can be happiness, excitement, pride on the one side, but also anxiety. Will I fit in? Will I be able to do it? What's it really going to mean? So there's both a wariness and excitability, excitement uh, at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing, Bruce. And Patricia said excitement and anxiety. Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah. So I can see we're all feeling similar things, right? We're excited. We're going to get a nice new paycheck. We're going to meet new people, but also anxiety. Or am I going to fit in? How easy is the job going to be for me to learn? How long is it going to take? All of these things can be true at once, right? And we don't have to feel one more strongly than the other. But just letting ourselves feel all the feels is important. The next example is hosting your family for the holidays. Yep, I'm seeing some laughter. What feelings come up for that one?
Past past drama uh, within the family, just hoping that the joy and the fun of the holidays uh, reign for the most part, and old grievances uh, don't don't surface.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can agree with you there.
Yeah, but
Thank
the
you
other
for sharing.
piece too, and you're talking about open to different things.
Mhm.
Part of it is, and I tend to be the sort of mollifier or whatever. Can't we all get along? Is realizing it's their drama, it's theirs to work out, um, kind of thing. So there's also that sense of finding peace with letting go.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, Bruce. Thank you for sharing. I'm seeing Tanya said stress and enjoyment. Patricia said, again, happiness slash excitement, dread also. Edith says exhaustion and anxiety. Yeah, yeah. So again, lots of feelings can come up, right? We can be excited to see them, to spend time together. And then sometimes, yeah, you remember the fight that you had last Thanksgiving or whatever, and you can feel dread and anxiety over hoping that the situation goes well. So thank you everyone for sharing. The next one is your child gets their driver's license. What feelings are we feeling? I can tell you guys that when I got my driver's license, my mom was very excited, but then really anxious because it meant I was going to be driving her car and I would have to be added to her insurance. And, if anything happened, it's on her. So I think, some of those feelings again, excited that your child is going to be independent, but also, yep, as Edith said, proud and terrified. So, yeah, I think that's pretty common. And again, both are valid and you're right to feel all of the feelings at once. The next one is you decide to quit smoking. What feelings might that bring up?
I guess that one would be a nervous again that you might fail, but then proud of yourself for making that decision.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Anyone else have anything?
Well, I think part of it is, this goes back 60 years for when I quit, but it's, you start thinking of what you're going to lose, the sort of social smoking and the relaxation that can come with it. So there's a sense of loss, but also a sense of, I'm going to get, if I want to get into running, I've got to do this kind of thing. So there's both excitement, but a real sense of loss or almost mourning.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely valid, right? Like you're missing out. Feel like you might be missing out on some of your usual habits, but also you know that it's you know, going to be better for you and healthier for you. And yeah, I see Edith said, I felt great, right? And so you can be excited about feeling great, but also it is work, right? You do have to put in the work to quit smoking. So all feelings are valid again. Barbara said, get rid of the smell. Yep. Yeah, it's a strong smell, huh? The last one here is training for a marathon. So, how might that make us feel?
Purposeful.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a great one. Thank you. Barbara said healthy. Patricia said again, excitement and anxiety at the same time. Yep. Tanya said exhausted. Yeah. Edith says excited and challenging. Great. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. So as we can see, right, we're rarely going to feel just one emotion when we're going through life. And so it's all about accepting all of the emotions and changing your perspective because that will help you and it won't silo you into just picking one emotion and focusing on that when the reality is we're feeling lots of things at once. So I will hand it back to Samaria.
Perfect. Next, we're going to talk about how to rewire your brain, like some different things, different ways that you can do it. So the first one is pause, right? Take a breath. Take your time. Time is important. Shifts and changes, as we know, don't come naturally to humans. We like structure as well as habits, right? It is quicker to think the either or. That's often why we do it. I just want to solve this problem quickly and move on, right? So fast paced. So we make the problem black or white, pick a solution, and then we move on. The important thing is that we need to slow down, take a breath, dissect the problem, questions, and key players, and process the information, sometimes several times over and over again. I'm someone that I have to sit. And sometimes I feel like I sit too much on a decision making, but I do pause. I take too long on that pause. I do pause. I do take some time to think, but then it's important. You don't have to make a decision right away. And sometimes you may have to make a decision right away and stick with that. But sometimes it's important to just slow down, take a breath, dissect the problem, involve other key players into it. Take some time to think before you make a rash decision. And again, continue to process it over and over again. Involve other people if you need support. The next one is change the question, right? Change the question. Let's say yesterday it was a really cold day and you forgot a jacket. Are you going to think, yesterday I wasn't prepared, so today I'm not going to go outside at all, right? Are we going to say that? No, you forgot something yesterday. Or are you going to say, yesterday I was unprepared, and this time I'm going to bring a jacket with me, right? That's a different way of thinking. So saying, because I forgot my coat yesterday and it was cold outside, I'm just not going to go outside at all today. Right? We want to rewire our brain to think, yes, yesterday I was unprepared. Today, let me prepare a little bit more. Let me take time. Let me make sure that I put my jacket in a place that I can remember. So when I walk out of the house, I see it and I can easily there. So a question here. How many of you have kids? How many of you have kids? I have two. Okay, Barbara, you have your hands up. Perfect.
I have two also.
Okay, Patricia, you said two. Okay,
Two.
perfect.
I also have two.
Perfect. So let's say your kids is upset because they dropped their ice cream in your car. That has happened to me. Now your kid is crying. You're feeling angry, maybe a little bit frustrated or flustered, but your kid is sad. Them being sad doesn't invalidate that you're angry. Both can be true at once, right? You probably just got your car washed. You went to get your kids some ice cream and they dropped it, right? You could still feel frustrated as well as flustered, but your kid is also sad. So you want to make sure that, you're validating your own feelings and what is coming up for you, as well as validating your child, right? They're feeling sad. They lost their ice cream. They're probably feeling sad because they dropped it in your car. So just, we can think about it that way. The next one is let go of assumptions, right? Again, either or, black and white thinking is easy, which a lot of us tend to do. That's why we like to do it so often. So again, making assumptions help us feel smarter, safer, like we know what to expect. However, if you let go of those assumptions, you give yourself an opportunity to grow as well as learn new things, adapt to new viewpoints, as well as different ways of life. So the idea here is to simply let go. I failed before, so I will fail again. Sometimes people, if they fail on a project or something that they were very passionate about, sometimes they won't do it again because they think they will, they're not going to be successful. But the more you try, the more you grow, the more you learn. You got to continue to try over and over again. You may fail once, you may fail twice, you may fail many times, but that is okay. It always goes like this. felt, you always have to try again. Failure happens. Nothing in life is really ever certain, as we know. People grow and we change all the time. We're constantly evolving. Sometimes people, associate things with luck. Situations fix themselves, and people are resilient. We are very, very resilient. So again, let go of assumptions that you may have towards yourself or towards others. And the last one is get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think this is the hard part. A lot of people feel so uncomfortable, so they refuse to expose themselves to different situations. I know that I used to be very uncomfortable with public speaking, even doing presentations, but I made a commitment and I was very intentional around public speaking, even if I was uncomfortable, leaning into it a little bit more, and accepting the mistakes that I have, and because I'm human, right? So life is constantly inconsistent. That is one of the ways things we know, one of the things we know to be true about life. We're constantly having to navigate, and it's normal, right? The weather changes, change is consistent and it's constant. So learning to walk that tightrope and knowing that you can be successful even when the road is bumpy can help you get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Again, putting yourself in that situation over and over again, getting up and trying again and again. And just because it makes you feel uncomfortable, it doesn't mean that you need to give up. But sometimes we take the easy route. If something makes us feel uncomfortable, like I'm not going to do it because it makes me feel uncomfortable. But the important thing is to lean into it. Again, try over and over again. Think about riding a bike or a skateboard. If you've ever been snowboarding, right? Imagine how often a person glides and rocks from side to side, all to stay balanced. That is what we're talking about here. So I'm going to pause to allow for some reflection questions. Was there any ever a time or even currently that you feel uncomfortable in different situations? And what do you do to lean into it a little bit more? Because I think uncomfortability is one of the areas that we tend to shy away from, right? Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So is there anything that you've ever felt uncomfortable with that you kind of leaned into to kind of decrease that uncomfortability?
Well, I think I mentioned on one of the earlier presentations about being a hospice volunteer, um, in addition to a little help in animal shelter. But I had gone through the hospice experience with my brother, really wanted to uh, sort of honor that and help people who were going through that as families. But there's also that sort of coming to grips with death and the sadness and, sort of feeling that multiple times as a volunteer and realizing that by signing up, you were going to see people you cared about dying fairly frequently.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it was kind of leaning leaning into the training, and we got really good training on doing it, but also sort of leaning into the first, patient that I got as a volunteer and sort of focusing on what was right in front of me. And I think that, allowed me to see that it was really more about living as fully as you could in the last bit of your life. But it's still sad. I mean, it's still after 14 years of doing it, there's an aspect of really feeling sad over what's coming forward, but also uh, it feels good to help families at that hard time.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Bruce, for sharing. And that training, I'm sure, definitely helped support you with leaning into that.
I'd like
Even
to say something.
Sure, go ahead, Barbara. Thank
I
you.
wanted to say something to Bruce. I think you are an incredibly strong person to do something like that. I give you all the credit I could give anybody. That's amazing to me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I also sort of turn it back saying that I think we all find things like that in our lives. That may, that does, maybe strike people as being sort of a step beyond. But the lesson that I'm getting from this is that we all really have these kind of things in our life. And, um, it sometimes takes some reflection, but I appreciate the compliment. So I'll stop it with that.
But you acted on it, and that's
Okay.
to me a very special thing.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Bruce. Anyone else before we move on to the next slide? Perfect. I'll go ahead and give it back to Valerie.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. Here we'll talk about encouraging both and thinking at work or here, in your volunteering time. So help implement both and thinking and inspire others by the first one here is encouraging experimentation. So allow people new ways of doing things, let them go through trial and error. You can always find new things without fearing failure or punishment. And that's a really great one to have in your everyday life too, right? A lot of times we learn more from the mistakes than from getting it right. And so both and thinking is great for that as well. The next one is diversifying the room. So allow people of different skill sets, backgrounds, educations, allow them to speak up and share what they're thinking or how they're doing things so that maybe you can get a new perspective, find a new way to do something as well, right? We all have different backgrounds and we all have different experiences, and we can all help each other be better at our jobs and our volunteering positions, in our everyday life, right? When we hear more perspectives. The third one is name the concerns, address the discomfort. So it's a great way, it's a great exercise, naming things that are concerning out loud. And as a group, it can help normalize any fears, address them head on, and remind everyone that you're all headed for the same goals, right? So maybe in your time as a volunteer, there's something that you've noticed, something that you'd like to change, something that concerns you. And by talking it out as a group, you can really figure out ways to address the issues, and also it becomes more of an open space for you to share anything that might be scaring you or concerning you, and really getting that validation and support from everyone else in the group is really important. The last one on here is model conflict building skills and willingness to receive feedback. So if you're a leader, it's expected that you set the expectation and process for giving and receiving feedback, but also as participants, we really want to grow as people. We want to get better at what we're doing. And we also have to be willing to receive feedback. And that, again, is a great way of using both and thinking, because you want to build your skill sets, but you also want to improve and, take any suggestions from the room. And so that's a really important thing to be mindful of as well. Anything else you guys would add to this list, or any questions, any comments? Great. Well, I will pass it to Samaria for the next slide.
Perfect. And just some additional notes that we like to cover when we're thinking about the both and thinking. That's a mouthful to say sometimes. Remember that it's not personal, right? It is almost never personal. Sometimes we have hard days and we think, of course, this will happen to me. Or we have something that feels like it's only happens to us and no one else, which is false, right? Again, do not take it personal. Most times it never is personal. So again, change up your mindset in a way that you see things. And then sometimes we fear, right? We fear being wrong or rejected. So we make assumptions and we stick to either or thinking. So allow yourself the gift of, if I'm wrong, here's my opportunity to learn something new. right? Give yourself the grace as well as the freedom to be like, okay, I made the wrong decision. Made the wrong assumption about something, regardless if someone is going to review it in a different way. Allow yourself that gift to say, if I'm wrong, this is an opportunity for me to learn as well as grow, and give yourself that freedom and that grace. Um, Very rarely is there a life or death situation on our hands that we can't lend even a second abstract thinking to. So again, give yourself grace, even if you inconvenience someone else by taking a pause and thinking things through with both and or framework. Take the time you need to feel comfortable with your answer. So again, allow your decisions, right, whether it's life or death, to support you. Give yourself that time, give yourself that opportunity to go back and think about the and or framework, and take your time to feel comfortable with your answer. Don't just, quickly come up with a decision because you feel rushed. So again, take a step back, take your time, allow that framework of the both and or thinking to, take place and allow you to feel more comfortable with your decision making.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'd like all of us to talk about, I don't understand life is not personal. So I want someone to talk, or all of us to talk about what that means to them.
Okay. Would you like to start, Barbara? What does that mean to
I
you?
don't I don't believe that statement is true. That's
Okay.
that's the reason I want to hear from someone else or
Sure.
anybody else.
Sure. And each one of us have our own perspective, right? So you can be true. That's where it goes to that and or thinking, right? You don't believe that life is not personal, right? You feel the opposite, right? But you like to hear from your other colleagues. So anyone else would like to share their perspective on life is not personal?
Well, I also Barbara, I also did a little hitch on that, but I took it in the sense of I don't know what the other person's motivations and thinking and everything else is. I mean, when someone says or criticizes or something else, there's always going to be a part of me that takes it personally. It's aimed at me, so I figure, there's a part of it that's personal. But the other part is I don't know how their day's gone. I don't know this or that, about, what started it. So, I think it goes to that thing of taking a step back and not trying to I'm just talking about me personally, but trying not to over emphasize that personal piece and taking some time to try and talk with the person, figure out where they're coming from, what's all involved, that sort of thing. So that's one that I sort of get, but I don't completely agree with.
Right. And you both have different perspective, right, Barbara and Bruce? You kind of take a step back to think, is this truly personal? Did I do something wrong to that person? Or is this person projecting? Right. And sometimes how can we not take things personal if it's directly to us? But I also think that it's important to kind of take a step back, reflect, and to think, maybe that person has some other issues, some underlying things that are going on, and I'm just in front of them and they are taking this out on me. So kind of get into the core of why certain things are happening. It doesn't even just have to be relational. It can be other things, other areas of your life. That sometimes we take things personal, just like I applied for a job and I just, for some reason, I'm not getting a call back, right? You don't want to take that personally because right now, the climate for job, is not good, right? So we want to kind of have all of those different perspectives in play to help us say this isn't personal. Many other people are experiencing this, or this is happening because, the climate, the workforce, is going through some changes. So trying to shift your thinking pattern instead of saying, you know what, this happened to me and it's personal. I deserve this, kind of going more to a deeper issue, a deeper framework, reframing.
I guess I was going, that's interesting you say that because I turn it into a positive thing. And I say, everything that happens to me, I say is personal. So I can either go with it, live with it, or I can change something about it. Me, not about them, about me. So I take that. The reason I said I don't agree with this is because I take it to my advantage. If something happens to me, something just happened to me yesterday, actually, that was unbelievable. And I looked at it one way and I said, you know what? I'm going to look at it a different way. And I turned it into, okay, I'm going to deal with this situation in a way that I haven't done with it in the past, I don't know, 10 or 15 or 20 years. and it works for me today. Okay. But that's why I say life is not personal. I don't agree with that statement. That's fine. You're making statements to show how you feel about or how you assess that
Right.
statement. I use it in a different way, but it's still positive for me. That's what I want to say. It still works for me because I've turned it into something for me that will be turn it into a positive viewing,
Yes.
a positive acknowledgement for me.
Yes. And that's still using that and or thinking, right? Even though you take it personal, you still change that and you switch that up to a positive, right? You didn't just focus on a negative thing that happened, right? You switched that up. So thank you so much, Barbara and Bruce, for sharing and your reflection on this. And again, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and give it back to Valerie.
Great. Well, thank you. This brings us to our last slide, actually.